Hey, it's Ms. Perenboom here, and we are looking at Unit 5, Part 2, Review of Multiplying and Dividing Fractions. Okay, so we'll start by summarizing what we know about multiplying fractions. If we just have two regular fractions, they're not improper, they're not mixed numbers or anything, then we can just multiply straight across. So in this example, 1/5 times 3/8, we multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So 1 times 3 gives us 3, 5 times 8 gives us 40. We can't do any additional simplifying, so that would be our final answer. When we have common factors, though, in the numerator and denominator of different fractions, we can do some canceling ahead of time. So in this example, 4/5 times -1/8, I see that 4 and 8 share a common factor of 4. So I can cancel out and divide each of those numbers by 4 ahead of time, saving me some simplifying later on. So 4 goes into 8 twice, and 4 goes into 4 once. So now when I multiply straight across, I have -1/10. All right, and in our next one, I've got -5/7 times -2/3. I'm going to give you guys a minute to select what your answer would be. Be careful here. We've got a negative times a negative. Okay, I'm hoping everybody said that we would end up with positive 10/21, which can't be reduced. All right, now when we have a whole number times a fraction, as a reminder, we want to change that whole number into a fraction by creating it like a very simple improper fraction. So 45 can be rewritten as 45/1, right? So anything divided by 1 is still itself. And now I can multiply just like what we were doing before. I see a common factor of 5 from 45 and 5, so I'm going to cancel that out. 5 goes into 5 once, 5 goes into 45 9 times, and now when I multiply, I've got 9 times 4, which is 36, over 1, which is just equal to 36. Okay, so a couple more here to practice with. 1/6 times 28, we'll rewrite that as 1/6 times 28/1. I can pull out a common factor of 2, so 2 goes into 28 14 times, 2 goes into 6 3 times, and now I've got 14/3, but remember, we're not going to leave our answer like that. We always want to write our answer simplified form, which means in this case we'll have to make it a mixed number. 3 goes into 14, let's see, 4 full times, so that's 12 with a remainder of 2, so that becomes 4 2/3. And our last one here, 3/5 times 200. So we'll set it up as 3/5 times 200/1. I'm going to give you guys a minute to figure out what that would equal and select your answer. Okay, so I'm hoping you eventually canceled out a factor of 5 either before you multiplied or after the fact, and so in the end we should end up with 120. All right, now if we have two mixed numbers that we're multiplying, remember that first we would rewrite each mixed number as an improper fraction, then we can use our multiplying rules. So 5 1/4 times 4 2/3. We'll rewrite it. 5 1/4 is going to become 21/4. So as a reminder, to change it, we're going to take our denominator times our whole number and then add that to the numerator. So 4 times 5 is 20, plus 1 makes 21 over that original denominator of 4. And 4 2/3 becomes 14/3, because 3 times 4 is 12, plus 2 is 14. All right, so now we can multiply numerators and denominators, but first I see some common factors I can cancel out. 21 and 3 are both divisible by 3. 3 goes into 3 once, and 3 goes into 21 7 times. 14 and 4 are both divisible by 2, so 2 goes into 14 7 times, and 2 goes into 4 twice. And now when I multiply, I have 49/2. And again, we're not going to leave our answer like this. We'll rewrite it as a mixed number. 2 goes into 48 a full 24 times with a remainder of 1, so 24 1/2. Okay, so let's try another one with mixed numbers here. I've got 2 3/4 times -3 1/6. Okay, so first let's rewrite them as our improper fractions. So 2 3/4 is going to get written as 11/4. -3 1/6 is going to get rewritten as -19/6. Now remember, if you have a negative mixed number, as you're changing it to an improper fraction, ignore the negative sign. So just do 6 times 3 is 18, plus 1 is 19, and then put that negative sign back in at the end. Now as I'm looking at these numbers, I don't see any common factors, which means we got to figure out what 11 times 19 is. So 11 times 19 ends up being -209. I know 4 times 6 is 24. And now to rewrite this as a mixed number, we're going to end up with -8 17/24. So that was kind of a hard one. But again, you can just use scratch paper off to the side if you're not sure, or you can do a little bit of guess and check to help you change it over back into a mixed number. All right, so one more question with multiplying, and then we'll move on to some dividing. If I asked you to find the area of this rectangle, think about what we already know about finding area. We know area is going to be length times width. So in this case, if one dimension of our rectangle, the length is 2 1/4 inches, and the width of the rectangle is 3/4 of an inch, then I'm still going to follow that same procedure of doing length times width. I just happen to have fractions that I have to multiply by. So 3/4, that can stay as is, but this 2 1/4 will have to get rewritten as 9/4. I don't see any common factors to cancel out, so we'll multiply. This becomes 27/16, and then we'll rewrite our final answer as a mixed number. So 16 goes into 27 only once with a remainder of 11. So that becomes 1 11/16 square inches, because again, if we're doing area, inches times inches gives us square inches. All right, so now let's take a look at dividing fractions. All right, so the whole idea with dividing fractions is we're going to keep, change, flip. We rewrite the problem by multiplying by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So for example, if I had 5/8 divided by 5/9, I'm going to keep the first fraction the same as 5/8. I'm going to change it to a multiplication problem, and I'm going to flip that second fraction from being 5/9 to being 9/5. So now it's set up as a multiplication problem, and we can use the same rules that we've been using this whole time. So I look and see, oh, I've got a common factor of 5 here. So 5 and 5 cancel out. 5 goes into 5 once in each time, or each place. And so now when I multiply, I've got 9/8, and I'll rewrite that as a mixed number. 9/8, why don't you go ahead and select what you think that would be as a mixed number. Okay, so hopefully you selected 1 and 1/8. All right, let's take a look at another example. If I had -4/7 divided by 5/14, so keep, change, flip, I'm going to rewrite that as -4/7 times 14/5. So again, keep the first one the same, change it to multiplication, flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. I see a common factor of 7 here that I could cancel out between 7 and 14. 7 goes into 7 once, and 7 goes into 14 twice. And now when I multiply, I've got -8/5, which then gives me a mixed number of -1 3/5. All right, and when we're doing division that involves mixed numbers, remember, just like with multiplication, we've got to first change those mixed numbers into improper fractions. Then we can rewrite the problem as a multiplication problem. So we'll take this -2 2/3, we'll make it improper, so again, ignore the negative. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8, so this is now -8/3, divided by, and this becomes 16/3. Okay, once it's set up with improper fractions, now I can do keep, change, flip. So keep the -8/3, make it times, and then we'll flip this to be 3/16. All right, I see some common factors here. 3 and 3 can cancel out, leaving 1 behind. -8 and 16 can both be divided by 8. 8 goes into 16 twice, and 8 goes into -8 -1 times. And so now when I multiply across, I've got -1/2. All right, so let's try a one-word problem here. You've got 6 2/5 cups of peanuts, and you package them into 2/5 cup servings. How many servings can you make? Okay, so we're taking a total amount of food, and we're dividing it up into servings that are each 2/5 of a cup in size. And so hopefully you heard me say that word. We're dividing up the total into these servings. So we're taking 6 2/5, we're dividing by 2/5. Okay, so we have a mixed number. Let's start by making it improper. So 6 2/5 becomes 32/5. We're going to divide that still by 2/5. And now that it's set up with no mixed numbers, I can rewrite it. So we're going to make this 32/5. So keep, change it to multiplication, and then change it to 5/2. Okay, I'm going to give you guys a minute to work out what you think your final answer is going to be. All right, so hopefully you canceled out a common factor of 5 and canceled out a common factor of 2, and that leaves us with 16 servings from the 6 2/5 cups of peanuts. All right, so that covers sort of everything, all the different skills we've talked about throughout the unit. I want you guys to take a moment to name 2 things in which you were reminded of, and then any questions that you have. So it says what's one question, but if you have multiple questions, go ahead and write them. And we'll see you back in class to continue practicing. Thanks for watching.